Please excuse me if I'm a little nervous. When I graduated college a couple of months ago, I never expected to be here tonight addressing the nation. My siblings and I, since growing up, and I know if elected, that's what he's going to do. He's going to make things happen and make things change.
It's a quiet day in Florida. Palm trees sway gently in the breeze. Tiffany Trump, daughter of former President Donald Trump, walks out of a sleek black car, wearing her signature smile and a look that says, "I have something to say."
Thank you all so much. It's so amazing to be with you tonight and say a few words.
For years, people wondered who she was behind the fancy dresses, behind the quiet smile. Now, at 31, she's finally breaking her silence. And what does she say? It leaves everyone shocked. We've heard stories about Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric Trump for years. They've been in the spotlight since day one. But Tiffany, she's always been the quiet one, the one thing people forgot. The mystery Trump. Some said she didn't belong. Some said she wanted nothing to do with politics. Others believed she was hiding something big. And now the truth is finally out. In a heart-to-heart conversation, Tiffany reveals what we all thought but never had proof of. It's not just about family secrets, it's about her truth, her journey, and her decision to step out of the shadows. Get ready, because this story isn't just about Tiffany Trump. It's about fame, family pressure, secrets, and finally freedom. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into a story full of twists, emotion, and truth. A story that might change how you see the Trump family forever. Growing up in the shadows. Tiffany Trump was not like her siblings. While Ivanka Trump smiled confidently beside her father at high-profile meetings, press conferences, and glamorous events, Tiffany was far away from all that. She wasn't part of that spotlight world. She didn't walk red carpets with her father or attend business launches in towering buildings. Instead, she was quietly living a very different life, one that most people knew almost nothing about. Tiffany was raised by her mother, Marla Maples, Donald Trump's second wife. After her parents split, Marla moved to California with little Tiffany, far from the busy streets and flashing cameras of New York. While her half-siblings stayed close to their father's big business world, Tiffany grew up near the beach, in a much quieter place. And it was in those early years that the first real divide appeared, the one that would make Tiffany feel like an outsider in her own family. Even as a small child, it was clear that Tiffany's world looked nothing like Ivanka's, Eric's, or Don Jr.'s. They were living large in New York, making headlines, traveling in limousines, and standing next to their powerful father. Meanwhile, Tiffany was attending school like any other kid in Los Angeles, living with her mother, and rarely being seen in public with her father. When people talked about the Trump kids, Tiffany's name was often missing. She didn't show up in magazines with the rest of the family. She wasn't seen at big family weddings or huge events at Trump Tower. Some people didn't even know Donald Trump had another daughter. And for Tiffany, that was a heavy feeling, like being forgotten. At school, Tiffany tried to blend in. She didn't like being treated differently because of her last name. She preferred just being called Tiffany instead of Tiffany Trump. To her, that name brought attention she didn't want. Some students looked at her as if she was some kind of celebrity. Others judged her before knowing her, thinking she was rich and spoiled like what they saw on TV. But the truth was far from that. Tiffany wasn't loud or demanding. She wasn't chasing fame or trying to be the center of attention. Instead, she was quiet, thoughtful, and a little shy. While her siblings loved business meetings, power, and politics, Tiffany loved music, drawing, reading, and spending time with close friends. She once said in an interview that she felt more at home with her piano than she ever did in a boardroom. Even though she carried the Trump name, she didn't feel like she truly belonged in the Trump world. And the truth is, many people could sense it. She wasn't brought to the front row at rallies. She didn't give speeches during her father's campaigns. Sometimes it seemed like she was purposely kept in the background, or maybe she chose to stay there herself. Still, that kind of quiet comes with its kind of pressure. Everyone expected her to act like a Trump. People had ideas in their heads about how she should behave, dress, or speak. But Tiffany didn't follow those ideas. She stayed true to herself, even when it made her feel left out. Her life may have looked simple, but it wasn't always easy. Imagine being part of one of the most talked about families in the world, but not being seen as part of it. Imagine growing up watching your siblings on magazine covers, hearing your dad praised on TV, and wondering where you fit into it all. Tiffany didn't complain. She didn't cause drama or call out her family in public. Instead, she stayed quiet. She focused on her path, and while the world kept guessing about her, she stayed strong behind the scenes. That silence wasn't weakness, it was a strength. Tiffany chose to live life on her terms. She wasn't interested in being just another famous Trump. She wanted to be herself, no matter how hard that was. In the end, her quiet voice began to speak volumes, and as she turned 31 and finally opened up about her past, people started to see her differently, not as someone who was forgotten, but as someone who quietly chose her way. Her complicated relationship with her father. Tiffany Trump's relationship with her father, Donald Trump, was never easy to explain.
He's always helped me be the best version of myself. By encouragement and by example, he motivates me to work my hardest.
While the world saw Ivanka standing proudly by her dad's side, often smiling in interviews and defending him on television, Tiffany was nowhere to be found. And that made people curious. Questions floated around for years. Where is Tiffany? Does she even talk to her father? Why isn't she in the family photos? The truth is, Tiffany's connection with her father was distant, complicated, and often painful. She wasn't part of the Trump inner circle, and she didn't grow up visiting Trump Tower every weekend. Tiffany recently admitted something many had already guessed. She didn't see her father very often while growing up. He was always busy with his real estate empire, his TV career, his personal life, and later with his entrance into politics. But while he was out building his name, Tiffany was quietly trying to understand her place in his world. Tiffany was raised by her mother, Marla Maples, mostly in California, far away from her father's high-profile New York lifestyle. While her siblings lived in the spotlight, Tiffany lived in the shadows. It wasn't just about distance, it was about connection or the lack of it. She wasn't getting the same calls, the same visits, or the same attention, and deep down it hurt. To the public, Tiffany didn't speak badly about her dad. She always smiled when asked about him. But sometimes a smile hides more than it shows. If you looked closely at her interviews, you'd notice a certain sadness in her eyes, a quietness in her tone. It was like she had learned how to answer carefully without revealing too much. But her silence was louder than any words. When Donald Trump ran for president, people waited to see how Tiffany would react. She was there, but only sometimes. She gave a short speech at the Republican National Convention, but she didn't seem as comfortable as Ivanka or the others. She didn't walk around the White House like she owned it. She didn't take on a role in the administration. She stood on the sidelines, unsure whether she was part of it all. And it showed. Tiffany didn't want to pretend. She didn't want to play a character in a world that didn't feel like hers. The truth was, she never felt fully accepted into the Trump empire. And just recently, in a quiet and heartfelt moment, Tiffany said something that broke many hearts. "I always felt like I had to earn his attention." It never just came. Those words hit hard. They weren't just about her dad, they were about years of feeling invisible, about always wondering, what more do I have to do to be seen? Imagine being the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the world, but still feeling unseen by him. Imagine watching your siblings get praised and celebrated while you stand in the background, hoping they'll notice you. That was Tiffany's life. And for many people, especially those with difficult parent relationships, her words felt deeply personal. But what makes Tiffany's story powerful is not just the pain. It's the courage. It takes strength to admit hurt, to speak up about something you've buried for so long. Tiffany could have stayed silent forever, pretending everything was fine. But she didn't. She chose to open her heart and say what so many daughters around the world feel, but never dare to say, "I didn't feel loved the same way." Now, Tiffany isn't trying to destroy her father's name or blame anyone. She's just being real. And in doing that, she's starting to heal. Because sometimes just telling the truth, even quietly, is the first step toward finding peace. And maybe, just maybe, her father heard her. Creating her path. Tiffany Trump could have easily followed the same road her famous family took, flashing cameras, headlines, and non-stop media attention. But from the beginning, she seemed to want something very different. While others ran toward the spotlight, Tiffany slowly stepped away from it. It wasn't because she was afraid, it was because she knew she didn't belong in a world full of noise, flashing lights, and never-ending pressure. After finishing high school, Tiffany made a surprising but thoughtful decision. She went to the University of Pennsylvania, just like her father had many years before. But that was probably the only thing they had in common. While Donald Trump was known for making bold statements and being in the public eye, Tiffany preferred peace and privacy. She didn't use her last name to get attention or special treatment. Most students at her school said she was quiet, polite, and focused. She didn't throw parties, and she didn't chase headlines. She studied hard, made close friends, and lived a simple student life. At college, she tried to blend in instead of standing out. That wasn't always easy. Having the name Trump meant people often looked at her differently. Some expected her to be loud or full of herself. But those who got to know her saw a different side, a young woman who was serious, thoughtful, and kind. She didn't brag about her family or act like she was better than anyone else. Instead, she listened more than she spoke, and many of her classmates admired that. But Tiffany wasn't done proving herself. After graduating, she made another big move. She chose to attend Georgetown Law School, one of the top law schools in the country. That's not something you can fake your way through. Law school is hard. It takes long nights, deep focus, and real commitment. Tiffany didn't ask for shortcuts. She worked for it. Every grade she earned, every test she passed, that was all her. She wasn't chasing money or fame. She wasn't interested in becoming a celebrity lawyer or being on TV. She had something else in mind. In quiet interviews, when people asked her about her goals, she'd often say, "I want to help people." And she meant it. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wanted her life to matter, not because of who her father was, but because of what she could do with her own heart, her brain, and her own choices. At one point, Tiffany gave music a try. She released a song called "Like a Bird" when she was younger. It didn't go viral. Most people barely noticed it. And you know what? That didn't bother her. Tiffany wasn't hoping to become the next pop star. That song was more like a moment, a small part of her journey. Something she tried and then let go. No drama, no sadness, just a step she took to see what she liked. That's what made her different. In a world where everyone is shouting for attention, Tiffany was fine with being quiet. She didn't need the world to clap for her. She was learning, growing, and becoming her person slowly and honestly. And now, years later, people are finally starting to notice her. But not because of her last name, because of her actions, her choices, her voice. As she speaks out more and shares her story, we're finally seeing the real Tiffany, not the daughter of a billionaire, not a piece of a political puzzle, but a strong, thoughtful woman who refused to be defined by someone else's shadow. She's walking her road, step by step, with courage and grace, and maybe that's the most powerful thing of all. Love, marriage, and support. That changed everything. In 2022, Tiffany Trump's life took a beautiful turn that many people had been waiting to see. She married Michael Boulos, a successful and charming businessman from Nigeria.
Tiffany Trump married Michael Boulos on Saturday in Palm Beach, Florida.
Their wedding wasn't just a big event, it was a graceful, elegant celebration filled with love, happiness, and hope for the future. Friends, family, and fans watched as Tiffany walked down the aisle with a glowing smile, looking like she had finally found her happiness. But there's more to this story than just the fancy dress and the big party. Michael Boulos is not just Tiffany's husband. He quickly became her greatest supporter and closest partner in life. From the very beginning of their relationship, Michael saw Tiffany for who she was, beyond the famous last name, beyond the public eyes and rumors. For years, Tiffany had struggled to find her voice. Growing up in a family where the spotlight was always bright on others, she often felt like she had to stay quiet or hide parts of herself. People didn't always understand her. They expected her to be like her siblings, loud, confident, always ready to be in the public eye. But Tiffany was different. She was soft-spoken, private, and sometimes even shy. She often felt misunderstood, like she was living behind a glass wall, watching the world but not fully part of it. That all started to change when Michael came into her life. Close friends say that Michael was the first person to encourage Tiffany to be herself. He gave her the safety and support she needed to stop hiding. Instead of feeling like she had to act like a Trump or meet everyone's expectations, Tiffany could finally relax. She could simply be Tiffany, no masks, no pretenses. Michael's belief in her was like a light shining through the darkness. He reminded her that she didn't need to prove anything to anyone and that her voice mattered just as much as anyone else's. Slowly but surely, Tiffany started to open up. She began sharing her feelings, her ideas, and her dreams more freely than ever before. After their wedding, Tiffany didn't just dive into the world of social events and public appearances. Instead, she began focusing on the things she truly loved. She traveled to new places, exploring different cultures and gaining fresh inspiration. She picked up writing, expressing herself quietly but powerfully through words. And behind the scenes, she worked hard on causes and projects that meant something to her, all while keeping a low profile away from the noisy media. It was during this time that Tiffany started to speak out more often, first in small ways, then with more confidence and courage. She gave interviews where she was honest about her feelings and experiences. She shared pieces of her story that many had only guessed at, but never heard directly from her. Then came the moment that shocked many, but felt like a long-awaited truth, finally being spoken out loud. Tiffany said these powerful words, "I never fit into the Trump world, and maybe I never wanted to." Hearing those words was like the missing puzzle piece falling into place. People had suspected this for a long time. They had seen the differences in her from the rest of the family, the way she kept to herself, the way she looked uncomfortable in political events or reality TV moments. But hearing it come straight from Tiffany made it real and raw. This admission showed a new side of Tiffany, one that was honest and brave. It was the voice of someone who had spent years trying to find where she belonged and was finally ready to say it out loud. She wasn't trying to hurt her family or make drama. Instead, she was simply being true to herself, and that honesty made her even stronger. With Michael by her side, Tiffany's life began to feel fuller and freer. She no longer had to live in the shadow of her family name or the public's expectations. Instead, she was building her path, a path filled with love, support, and the freedom to be exactly who she wanted to be. Their marriage was more than a wedding day. It was the start of a new chapter. A chapter where Tiffany could finally shine not as a Trump, but as her own person, with her own voice and her own dreams. What Tiffany's truth means for the Trump legacy. When Tiffany Trump spoke openly about her feelings about how she often felt left out and how she never really fit into the world that her family lives in, those words did more than just tell her personal story. They sent a message far bigger than anyone expected. Her truth challenges everything many people think they know about the Trump family and the legacy they carry. For years, the Trump name has been linked with loud voices, big business deals, and powerful public appearances. The brand is about strength, confidence, and being at the center of attention. Donald Trump himself built a career on being bold, unapologetic, and always making headlines. His children Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric have often followed this path, standing proudly in the spotlight, speaking out, and taking on public roles. But Tiffany's story is very different. She is the quiet one in a family known for noise. She is the soft voice in a crowd that often shouts. And that difference is important. It shows us that even in a family that seems to value power and fame above all else, there is room for someone who wants something else, someone who values peace, privacy, and simply being true to herself. By choosing to be honest about her feelings, Tiffany sends a powerful message to many young people who might feel the same way. She shows that you don't have to live your life by other people's expectations. You don't have to act a certain way just because of your last name, your family, or what others think you should be. Imagine growing up with a name that people immediately recognize. People expect you to be loud, confident, and always in the spotlight. That's a heavy burden. But Tiffany teaches us that it's okay to be different. It's okay to not want the fame or the business deals or the constant public attention. You can make your own choices about what kind of life you want. Her words also remind us that behind every famous family, there are individual people with their own dreams and struggles. It's easy to see a family like the Trumps as one big, perfect team always winning. But Tiffany's honesty tells us the truth that even in the most famous families, some people feel left out, unheard, or misunderstood. And that's a feeling many people can relate to, no matter who they are. Choosing peace over power is a brave decision. It's not always easy to say no to what the world expects. But Tiffany's courage in speaking up shows that you can follow your path and find happiness on your terms. That might mean choosing a quieter life, focusing on the things you love, or just being true to yourself instead of fitting a certain mold. This truth also changes how we see the Trump legacy. It's not just about business or politics or fame. It's about real people with real emotions. Tiffany's story adds a new chapter 1 that is honest, thoughtful, and filled with hope for anyone who feels like they don't quite belong. In a way, Tiffany's voice opens the door for others to share their stories, to admit their struggles, and to embrace their own unique paths. It's a reminder that every family, no matter how famous, has its own challenges. And it's a lesson that being different is not a weakness, but a strength. So, when we think about the Trump legacy today, Tiffany's truth becomes a symbol of change. It's about understanding that success and happiness look different for everyone. It's about accepting that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most important messages. Tiffany may not be the Trump who chases the spotlight, but she is the Trump who shows us all that being yourself is the most powerful thing you can do. And that message, that's something no one can take away. So now you've heard the truth. Tiffany Trump, the quiet one, the outsider, the forgotten daughter, has finally spoken. And in just a few honest words, she changed the way millions of people see her. She didn't scream, she didn't blame, she simply shared her truth, and sometimes that's more powerful than anything else. At 31, Tiffany isn't trying to impress the media. She's not looking to be a celebrity, she's just being real. And that's what people love. That's what we respect. Her journey teaches us something important. You don't have to shout to be heard, you don't have to follow the crowd, and you definitely don't have to hide your pain. Tiffany's courage to speak out to say what we all suspected is a reminder that honesty still matters, and that healing begins when we stop pretending. As the world watches the Trump family from the outside, remember this: sometimes the quietest voices carry the deepest truths. And Tiffany Trump, she may have stayed silent for years, but now that she's talking, the world is finally listening. So, what do you think? Was she hiding all along? Or was she just waiting for the right time to speak? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because there's always more to the story.